In this video, we're having a look at the Motorola Edge 60 Pro. Hi, I'm Lee. Welcome to the channel. I hope you're having a lovely day. So this is the Motorola Edge 60 Pro. It's a really interesting phone with some really interesting specs. So to begin with, it is going on sale in Australia on July 10th, which is hopefully the day that you are watching this video, or you're watching it afterwards, I suppose. It is retailing for $11.99, so 1,200 Australian. And let's get into some of the, well, actually, before we get into specs, let's have a look at this. This is the Pantone, I believe, color. So this is sort of like a purplish color. It's also available like in a gray color. As you can see, it's got 4 cameras on the back, and we'll get into that because the cameras are really a big selling point of this. But it's a nice looking phone. It's a light phone. It's a ridiculously thin phone. In terms of physical attributes, you've got a USB-C port down here on the bottom. That is where your SIM card goes in. It does have a dual SIM, so you can have a normal SIM as well as an eSIM. The advantage there is that particularly if you travel, you could have your Australian SIM card in there, but then when you're out and about, when you're traveling different countries, mobile roaming can cost quite a lot of money, so you can get an eSIM in that local country. Or there's actually a couple, in fact, I'll put a description down in the bottom. There's a couple of different services that you can get. There's one that I like in particular. It is a referral code that you can buy an eSIM in whatever country you're going and have data in there. So having an eSIM is really, really cool. Another way you could use an eSIM is if you had a work phone and a personal phone. This way you can have just the one phone, but have the 2 different SIMs in there. Then you have a button over here on the left-hand side. You then have your wake and sleep button on the right-hand side, and you've got your volume buttons on the left there. You have a fingerprint scanner built into the screen, which I don't actually have to find that because I've also got face recognition built into the selfie camera, so it's actually using facial recognition. And I'm just gonna, yep, cool, turn on Moto AI, whatever that is. Now this actually brings me on to an interesting topic, and I've mentioned this in a couple of other videos. I like the fact that a lot of phones these days, and I think Motorola does this pretty well, is that they come in with quite a lot of tutorials and little tips and tricks, because there are so many features and functions on smartphones these days that very few people can know all of them, and there's probably quite a lot of things that are really useful that your phone can do that you may not realize that your phone can do. So I like the fact that you've got stuff built in that talks you through the steps of what you can do and how you can do it. Of course, most people are just like me, where they just go, yeah, next, and just skip through it. So even though I like it, I don't use it that often myself. In terms of the screen, really nice, bright screen. You actually have the claimed performance on the screen is 4,500 nits in peak brightness. And what that means is in certain peak areas, it can get that bright. Now, obviously, the whole screen's not that bright, but it's a really bright, clear screen, so for being able to see things really, really good. The refresh rate is pretty darn good. No, stop that. The refresh rate is pretty darn good, so you've got 120 hertz refresh rate, so being able to zip around and move things, as you can see here, it's not laggy or jaggy or anything like that. The processor is a MediaTek Dimensity 8350 Extreme. Not quite sure what that means, but I'm sure that's very powerful, because I've definitely seen in terms of the actual performance of the phone, it works just fine. In fact, better than fine. Now, it can also do up to 90 watts of charging off of the USB port. The charger is not included. You just get a cable with the phone, and it does do wireless charging as well, up to 15 watts. So that's nice. I really like phones that, like, for me, like, wireless charging was almost like, the table stakes, because I use wireless charging more than anything else. It also has a feature called 5-watt power sharing, which I believe what it means is basically it can actually send power out of the USB-C port. So if you needed to charge your headphones or something like that, you could actually very slowly drain the battery of the phone to charge something else, which is pretty darn cool. When it comes to gaming and graphics and things like that, I think with most of these phones, once you get past $1,000, I think there's a certain expectation of what the phone is capable of, and I've definitely found that in terms of gaming. I'm not a huge gamer, but the games that I've tested on this run just fine. As you can see, the graphics work just fine. There's no sort of stutters or anything like that. So yeah, from a gaming point of view, I think it's it's just fine and dandy. The size of the screen is a 6.7 Super HD screen. It's a really, really good screen in terms of color rendition and stuff. It can do HDR10+. What that means is it'll show a really good range between the brightest and the darkest points when you're watching videos. That's really nice. Speaking of watching videos, you can see here that the screen is really nice, crisp and clear. So watching videos is an absolute pleasure on this. The speakers are also pretty good. I mean, I normally listen to things with headphones, but you can see here that the rendition of the color, the brightness, it's all really, really good and really easy to, I mean, if I even just punch in on this, I mean, obviously the quality of the video will be dictated, will dictate a little bit of that as well. But you can see here that it's a really nice screen. So watching videos on this, yeah, 2 big thumbs up for that. And just to sort of spruik my own ways, this is actually a showreel of some of the nature and wildlife stuff that I've shot over the years. So all the stuff that you see here was actually filmed by me on various different projects that I've done across Africa, Galapagos, and various other places around the world. And speaking of traveling around the world, in terms of robustness, this phone has got an IP68 and an IP69 dust and waterproof protection. What that means is that, according to Motorola, it's got military grade MIL-STD-810H grade. So it's really, really robust. So for example, you can have this up to 1.5 meters for 30 minutes in water. So it can go right underwater. It's also got water touch, which is a clever little thing where I think what it means, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think what it means is basically that if you need to unlock the phone while you're underwater, it will recognize your finger on the fingerprint scanner, even if there's a little bit of water on your finger. Yeah, it's probably more if there's water on your finger rather than if you're underwater. I mentioned that this is the Pantone purple, they call it grape color. It does ship with this case, which is nice. It's nice it actually does ship with a case, so you can just pop it in the case there. And obviously the case matches the color of the phone, which is, you'd expect them to, but not necessarily. So I like that it ships with a case of the same color. Obviously you can get loads of other cases for it. It does also come in what they call a Pantone shadow grade, which is kind of like a gray, slightly greenish gray. So yeah, I'll put some photos on the screen so you can see what that looks like. Now let's get into the cameras on this phone. And the cameras are one of the really big selling points of the phone. So for example, the front camera is a 50 megapixel camera. So just the front facing selfie camera here is a 50 megapixel camera. Then on the back, you've got a 50 megapixel main camera, and that's got a Sony Lightia 700C sensor. Now, what that means is that it's really, really good in low light. So it's very sensitive to light. And so if you want to take videos and photos in low light, it's going to do really, really well for you. You also have a 50 megapixel ultra wide as well as a macro. So you can use the ultra wide for a lot of macro shots. And I'm a big fan of macro shots. And then finally, you've got a 10 megapixel 3x optical zoom and up to 50 times super zoom. Now the 50 times super zoom, that's using, software and stuff to zoom in. It's, your mileage may vary, but the 10 times optical zoom, that's pretty darn good just in and of itself. In terms of video function, so when you're recording video, you can go up to 60 frames per second in 4K, and then you've got up to 240 frames per second in super slow-mo. So that's really, really cool in terms of the slow-mo functions you can get. You do also have stabilization built in. So again, if that's, a lot of people will think that stabilization is good for when you're walking and filming video, and it is, but also stabilization is good for when you're trying to take macro shots. So if you're trying to get really, really in close, or if you're trying to take photos in low light, having good stabilization will help make those photos a lot crisper and clearer. It has 512 gigs of internal storage. Unfortunately, that isn't expandable, but 512 is pretty darn good. And again, because they're selling it on the whole photos and video thing, I think that's one of the reasons why they give you, that extra storage, because you're going to be taking lots of photos and videos, and you'll need the space to store them. A really cool feature, and this is across all Motorola phones, but it's a feature that I really like, is that you can shake the phone and that will activate the camera automatically. So the idea behind that is, as you're pulling the phone out of your pocket, you just give it a bit of a wiggle like that, and the camera comes on automatically. The reason why I really like that feature is, most of the time when you're pulling the phone out of your pocket and you want to get to the camera really quickly, it's because something's happening in front of you. I want to take a photo of this really quickly. Your kid's doing something cute or what have you. So the fact that as you're pulling the phone out of your pocket, you can do this, and the phone will automatically go to the camera, and you don't have to find the, tap a button and flick up or flick left or flick whatever. Just that little feature, it's one of my favorite features on Motorola phones. So what are my final thoughts about the Motorola Edge 60 Pro? Well, you know what? I think smartphones in general have a bit of a challenge these days, because they're all such mature products. You know, how do they stand out? How do they make themselves seem different from other ones? And I think it's quite clear that what Motorola is doing here. Now, they've got all the AI stuff, but the AI stuff they've got on all their phones. You know, the cameras on this is really the big selling point for this. So I think the quality of the photos and the footage you're getting. So if you're looking for, you know, $1,200, not too bad for a phone of this kind of spec. And for the kind of cameras and the kind of photos and videos you can get out of this, I think if you're looking for a relatively affordable, thin phone with really nice screen, really nice features, and really, really good cameras, I think the Motorola Edge 60 is definitely one that's worth looking at. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was useful. If you have found it helpful or useful, please like and subscribe. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you so much for your support, and we'll catch you on the next one. Safe and happy, whatever it is you're doing. It has 512 gigs of built-in storage. Unfortunately, again, same thing with the other phone. Unfortunately. Wearing headphones may improve your gaming experience. Yeah, well, loading faster may also improve my gaming experience, but I don't see you offering that. It also has 5-watt wired power. This is just to type into the storage stuff. It has 512. It has 512. It has 512 gigabytes of storage into. It has 512 into. I mentioned that this is the Pantone. So what are my final thoughts on the Motorola Edge 60 Pro? I think. Yeah, well, I do. I think